Welcome, friends, to our second Treasures of the Meetinghouse. This is the second of 4 webinars co-sponsored by our partner organization, the Roxbury Historical Society, highlighting the treasures of our stunning historic urban ministry meetinghouse, commonly known as First Church in Roxbury. We're proud this evening also to premiere a public service announcement by our partner organization, the Dillaway Thomas House, Roxbury's own museum, and just across the street from us at the end of tonight's webinar, so stay tuned for that. The Roxbury Meetinghouse, Boston's oldest surviving wood-framed church building and a pending Boston landmark, is no longer home to a congregation, but is being transformed into a true meetinghouse, a space to serve our Roxbury neighborhood. The congregation of First Church in Roxbury gathered on this site in 1631 and built the first meeting house here in 1632. The congregation worshiped here, building successive meeting houses until 1976, when the congregation merged with the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry. The meeting house, adjacent buildings, and this campus now house our urban ministry work and programs. Our mission in Greater Boston is to work across race and place to dismantle racism and white supremacy culture and to advance racial, social, and economic justice. In 2021, our programs include a domestic violence shelter, a workforce development program for trauma survivors, after-school programming for Boston high school students, and community engagement through the arts and humanities. We look to a day when our meeting house will be filled and alive with music, dance, lectures, political debate, and community celebration. And we've been living into that mission. 5 years ago, we completed a full exterior meeting house restoration. Come visit us and you'll see a meeting house on the hill in Roxbury as beautiful on the outside as when it was built in 1804. Last spring, we completed an historic green space restoration too. And now we plan an interior restoration, one that will affirm the historic integrity of the building while making it into an event space for today and tomorrow. We've worked with Roxbury neighbors, artists, and historic preservationists, imagining together what this space will look like in the years to come. But the work that we're undertaking is not only plaster and paint, it's also examining our own history. In collaboration with the Roxbury Historical Society, we're beginning an examination of the history of First Church with enslaved people and with enslavers and those who profited from the slave trade. We'll ask where First Church congregants and ministers stood on issues of enslavement and abolition. We all like to tell stories of the proud parts of our history, but to move forward in truth, we need to know and tell all of our history. Highlighting the importance of examining the fullness of history and the history of First Church is historian, former Urban Ministry board member, and current Roxbury Historical Society board member, Byron Rushing. And here's a message from him now.
History means people and events through time. We do not know where we are if we cannot remember where we're from. We cannot take and make informed decisions about where to go if we can't recognize where we are and where we have been. History is time, past, present, and future. There are buildings which tell us parts of these stories. The stories of all the peoples who founded the nation and worked to continue to transform it today. In Roxbury, we are fortunate to have one of those buildings preserved in First Church Roxbury. First Church Roxbury. Come read it. Listen to its story. Remember how you have known it in your own story. Come together to make informed decisions about its future. Here in Roxbury, on the land of the Massachusetts, which Europeans invaded in 1630 and Africans were brought in February of 1638.
Always so good to hear from Byron. And now I am so delighted and excited to introduce my co-moderator for tonight's webinar, Celia Grant. Celia is a longtime member of the Roxbury Historical Society. She serves on the board, and she lives right here in Highland Park. She's a lover of art, of gardening, of Roxbury history and architecture, and is a wonderful friend of the Urban Ministry, and I'm so proud to welcome her here tonight. Welcome, Celia.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Mary Margaret.
Hi, Celia.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to listen to our guest speaker tonight. I've known Thomas for a long time. We were on a board together a million years ago. But anyway, I will just say, so Thomas Plant is our guest speaker tonight, and he is the president of the Unitarian Universalist congregation in John Eliot Square. And he's a church historian, and his knowledge of the history of Roxbury and the original worshiping congregation of First Church is deep and vast. He's led many tours of the meeting house. He actually led tours for oh my God, Roxbury.
Discover Roxbury?
Discover Roxbury. Yes, a lot. I mean, his knowledge is vast.
Yes,
it is. So he's led many tours of the meeting house and of the neighborhood and around First Church. He's leader of the Roxbury celebration of Patriots Day, which is really wonderful. If people haven't seen it, it's or haven't been to it, it's a reenactment of the Patriots Day celebration, and he was a member of an earlier organ restoration committee at First Church in Roxbury, and is a former board member of the UU Urban Ministry. There's so much to say about Thomas. The thing that I like to say about him, though, is that he is also an urban beekeeper. And I think that that's like so amazing and fantastic. And I consider him a true Renaissance man. And I would just like to welcome Thomas.
Oh, Thomas. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Celia. So good to be here. Hi, Mary Margaret. I'm so
Hi.
glad to be here this evening.
We're so happy to have you. So before we begin our conversation with Thomas, we wanted to share a bit of another video with you. We went down to Stonington, Connecticut, where organ restorationist Scott Huntington has spent the past 2 years carefully tending and restoring every single part of our historic Hook and Hastings organ. So we're going to start with a video that shares some of that information, and then we'll go right back to Thomas and our conversation.
The fact that it was built by Hook and Hastings is well known, and they were the preeminent organ building firm of the United States for most of the 19th century. The factory in Boston was on Tremont Street, just around the corner from this church. It is the closest organ to the factory that they ever delivered. And we think the factory is in the vicinity of where the new police station is. The 1880s period was their most prolific. They were shipping an average of between 40 and 50 organs a year, so that's one a week. So its historical significance is that it is the largest surviving hook organ of the 1880s. And beyond that, it's in completely original condition, and it's in its original home. Hi, I'm Scott Huntington, the restorer of the organ in the Roxbury Church. Welcome to the shop in Stonington, Connecticut. You will see right there what you are looking at is the pedal board for Roxbury, which is one of the last pieces to be done. And it's getting new natural coverings like this to replace what was on there from 1972 because they were the wrong size. And over here are the stop jams for Roxbury. They still need to have their red cloth inserted in the hole, and the stops, stick out of those holes like this, and these sit on either side of the console. This is all antique cherry, which has been oiled and waxed, cleaned, oiled, and waxed. The pedal board is cherry. The naturals are maple. The walnut, or the sharps, are rosewood capped walnut. The bench, it's stain coat because they had put a stain. That was the hardest thing for me to figure out, is how they had actually treated the wood. And this was gouged and worn down. There was no finish left. So I had to invent a stain that matched the stain that they had put on it, because this was now raw wood. And then a layer of varnish. We'll go over this. And the reason you stain wood, particularly like cherry, is that there's a lot of variation from piece to piece, light and dark. And so you put a leveling stain over it, which makes every piece the same color. Yeah, so now we'll go into the cage to see the parts of the organ that got moved here for the duration until the church is ready for these parts to go back. It's climate controlled. This is all Roxbury. All these trays. This is the case sides. This is the impost here. These are the two roundels from the pedal towers that had come apart, and they have been restored. These are all pipe trays. This entire stack here is the facade pipes, but all these wooden crates all the way back on both sides, these are all Roxbury's pipes. These are on the extreme right and left side, way high up in the air. They're what are called pedal towers. There's a matching rounded bit on the bottom. So it's both functional and decorative because they keep the pipes in place, as well as being a decorative element that's part of the casework. The part that was delivered so far is the main functioning part of the organ, the wind chest, the key action, the stop action of the wind reservoirs, the wind lines, the console, everything that describes the organ's mechanical structure. What came here for safekeeping, because it can't be installed until the room is done, is the exterior casework, the facade, the decorated facade pipes, and all the interior pipework. This organ was cleaned and made playable, barely, after the fire in 1992, and there was a very dedicated group of church people that washed every pipe in the organ in a bathtub outside the church. And that made a very big change in how the organ sounded before that, because the pipes were just choked with dirt. And so the organ that people heard in 1992 was a revelation compared to how it had sounded for a few decades before that. Now, with every part of the organ renewed, the pipes are going to go on that voicing machine over there, where they're going to get regulated. And now not only the pipes are going to be cleaned, but every part of the organ interior is going to be cleaned. And so the organ is going to sound as if a veil has been lifted from it. It's going to speak with a new brightness, a new clarity, more color. The softer stops are going to be more different from one another than they were before. And most especially, the organ's going to look different. And the woodwork, the cherry case has been cleaned, it's been oiled and waxed So it's going to gleam with a new warmth and clarity. The wood grain will be easier to see because it's not covered with years of candle smoke and soot and whatever. And so the whole thing is just going to be brighter and more colorful. The sound is going to be slightly brighter, but certainly more colorful. The case is going to be brighter and more colorful. And it's visually and architecturally, it's going to be quite a significant contribution to the room. When the facade pipes were white, it sort of blended in to the background. And now it's very definitely not going to blend into the background. It's going to be as significant an architectural feature of the room as any other of its architectural members.
So Thomas, you got to see that full video earlier, and I know I saw you smiling when you watched the whole video. So maybe we'll just kind of begin with some reaction from you about what's happening with the organ.
Well, I'm so impressed by what Scott was saying. I'm so excited for the full restoration of the Hook and Hastings organ, because we were initially there at the beginning when it was we took apart the organ. So hearing the full voice of this organ is going to be so incredible. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, Thomas. Celia, do you want to get us started on the questions?
I would love to. And actually, I wanted to just remind all of the participants that if you have questions, we will have a Q&A at the end. And if you could put your questions in the chat, we will try to get to as many of those as we possibly can. And I guess, I want to start, Thomas, asking you, can you say a little bit or talk a little bit about how the organ came to be in the meeting house? And is it the original organ, things like that? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you, Celia. I guess I should say that this is not the first organ in the meeting house. It's the second organ in the meeting house. The first organ in the meeting house was actually the parish committee was formed and had to report to the standing committee about seeking a new organ. And they raised money through a subscription in 1821. They were looking for music to enhance their worship service. And they bought the very first organ for the first church or the first religious society, which was a Thomas Appleton organ. And it cost about $20,000. And they raised that by everyone contributing through a subscription series of, to music to put this new organ into the church. By the time they were into the 1850s and 60s, they were looking to have a more superb instrument for their meeting house, and they formed an organ committee, and they finally came to thinking that they would like to purchase a new one. And that's how the second organ, which we were talking about, the Hook and Hastings, the Elias and George Greenleaf Hook, and at a later time became the Hook and Hastings Company. So the brothers themselves were originally from Salem, and they came to Boston about 1832 and started, they had worked with William Goodrich, who was the premier organ builder at that time, and they opened their own firm. And as Scott has said, they came to Roxbury and on Tremont Street, and they built their organ company there. And that eventually led to the First Church in Roxbury purchasing the instrument that you see today that's being restored. And they purchased it between 1881 and 1883. The one that you're seeing that Scott detailed and showed is an Opus 1171. And I'll talk about that a little more later.
And so you said the original one, Thomas, was about $20,000.
Yes.
Which I can't even imagine how much that would be in
In
2021.
today's- Yes.
That sounds, I mean, that's a lot of money in
It is.
in the early 1800s.
Yes, they could raise money. The pew boxes themselves were quite expensive. And they could raise the additional money because people were wealthy in Roxbury. And of course, they were shipping merchants, bankers, everything. So they were quite first citizens of the greater Boston area. So they could afford it.
Did they have to alter that space for the Hook and Hastings, the organ that we're talking about tonight?
Yes, this was a significantly larger organ. And so everything would have to be enlarged. And of course, the gallery, which they had to be altered somewhat to get that particular new instrument into it. So yes, so there was a lot of alterations and so forth. The pew boxes again, the subscribers to those pew boxes in the gallery had to make some accommodations.
Wow. So Thomas, in the video, it was mentioned that this is not the first time that the organ was restored. And I think that you were around when the first set of damage, I guess, happened to the organ. Can you talk a little bit about what happened during that time?
Yes, in 1982, there was a huge fire in John Eliot Square that engulfed the Eliot Hotel, which was connected to the house, which we now know is directly across from the church, and the Cox Building, which was next door on very close to the meeting house. The firemen, it was a 9-alarm blaze, and the flames were jumping from one building, from the Eliot Hotel to the Cox Building, and the flames were jumping over the roof of the first meeting house, the first church in Roxbury. The firemen, knowing the importance and the historic character of First Church in Roxbury, set up a firewall by watering down the church with their hoses. And the water got up under the eaves of the roof and in through the belfry, and it drained down into the belfry, into the gallery, and down to the first floor of the meeting house. This caused a lot of damage to not only the gallery, which the material in the pews that covered the pews were severely damaged. The organ cabinet was damaged from the water that got into the organ. And of course, it rendered it unplayable. So the partial restoration came about when we went with Reverend Dr. Thomas Payne, who was a senior minister at large here in Roxbury from then the Benevolent Fraternity of Unitarian Churches. We met with him because we were also wanted to see the organ restored after it was made unplayable. And many of us hadn't heard how the organ sounded. So we got together with Dr. Payne, Reverend Payne, and members of the American Guild of Organists and the Organ Historical Society. And we started to plan to try to restore the organ. We raised about $25,000 through 3 concerts. We had the first concert was at the First Parish in Lincoln, Massachusetts. And then we followed up with another concert at the Church of the Unity in Northeastern. And then we had a celebratory concert with later, which I'll talk about. But then we realized that was not enough money to do a partial restoration of the church organ. We were lucky and very fortunate to have a donor who will remain anonymous, Mr. PT. He ended up giving us the additional money so we could do the partial restoration. And that's when Scott Huntington and other members came in, and we took the pipes out, all 1,500 of them, and washed them in a tub, cast iron tub, which was donated to us by one of the members of the congregation, Ralph Walton, and we washed all the soot and dirt out of those pipes. It took a long time. We built the trays, and we put all the organ pipes in them, sent them off to be repaired. The chest of the organ was taken out. It was quite oblong. It was very difficult to get out of the church casing. And then that was taken to Plainfield, New Hampshire for restoration.
I'm just trying to picture, Thomas, this is like a story that I always moves me when I imagine the faithfulness and just care of the people who worked on that organ. You carried out, did you say 1,400 pipes and washed them in a cast iron bathtub in the yard?
On the north side of the meeting house, yes.
And you had to fill it with water and then keep dumping the water out?
We had to fill it with water and wash it and fill it many
this.
times because those pipes were pretty dirty, as Scott has mentioned. They were full of soot. And of course, they had to be clean. And so when they were clean, they were then placed in the trays.
It's amazing.
Storage, repair. And some of their tongues had to be replaced as well. So there's a little reed that goes into the pipes that, so all those things had to be repaired. So it was a partial restoration.
And you were one of the people who helped with that, Thomas?
I was one of the people on the organ committee. The committee itself, Dr. Payne, Reverend Payne was there, Peter Sykes, Barbara Owen. We had Lois Regestein. We also had Lois Regestein, Ralph Walton, and Lydia Vickers from the congregation.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
We're so lucky that you guys were able to have the wherewithal to, get that rescue underway.
Yes, we had great support in Scott Huntington and the American Guild of Organists, and also the American Organ Historical Society, which Barbara Owens from the Newburyport Church also gave us a lot of support. And so we felt that we were doing wonderful things with the people who knew most about organs in the whole area. So we were just really happy to see that happen.
And it's 30 years later, and Scott Huntington is again, finally at last, the same person who's worked on this organ.
He has, and Scott is a great organ builder, and I know how meticulous he is, and I know it's going to be a great job that he's doing. And again, it was just a partial restoration. We didn't do anything with the casing or the facade pipes. We did everything on the interior. And I should say, because the water infiltrated the casing, there was some plastic sheeting that was put in the back of the organ to keep it from being this happening again. And of course, I think they repaired the church roofing, and so those things were sealed so that we wouldn't have the same kind of problem in the future.
Wow. So I guess just coming from you, like on a personal basis, I mean, tell me what you think is the significance of this organ. Why is it so important?
Well, the first thing is that it's one of their last organs of the Hook and Hastings Company that was, as Scott has mentioned, that was very close to its factory in Roxbury. It is in its total unaltered state. The 3-manual tracker system was still intact. And the significance of that is that many of the Hook organs were in disrepair throughout Boston and other places, and they were able to come in and see the 3-manual tracker system in our organ, and that was allowed them to repair their 3-manual system in their churches, like Church of the Holy Cross is one of those organs that were not playing at the time. It's larger than our organ, but the tracker system wasn't working properly. So they were able to restore their organ and get it playing again. So the significance of that is that, you know, we had an unaltered tracker system in the 1883 Hook and Hastings organ.
So basically, so you're saying, so they used our organ, they looked at how it was put together, so they could use that to repair or, yeah, other organs.
Their organs, yes. And so the other significant things is that, you know, this one is built for romantic music. Brahms, Mendelssohn, Buxtehude, other romantic period composers. And I think what we heard was a very soft organ sound, very round. And I think when we get the restoration of the organ by Scott, we're going to hear a very big sound come out of the organ, and that we didn't have the capability or to hear that. And so I'm very, very excited about this restoration, the full restoration of the organ.
Thomas, can you tell us some things? Can you tell us a little bit more about the Hook and Hastings company itself?
Yeah, so the company itself, after it came to Roxbury, they met Frank Hastings. He was working in their clerk in their factory, but he was more on the business end and so forth. And about in 1871, the brothers Hook were thinking about retirement because they had built, as Scott has mentioned, a lot of organs. And so they were thinking about retirement in 1871. Frank came to them and decided that he wanted to be part of the business, and he became one of their partners. And so it became the EG&G Hook and Hastings Company. And this was from 1871. Later, when the brothers Hook passed away, within a year of each other, 1881, 1882, Frank Hastings just changed the name to Hook and Hastings. And so they moved the firm from Roxbury to Weston, Massachusetts. And he built their new factory along a railroad track. And they had very good farmland that he bought up in Weston and built a larger factory in there. They were churning out big organs, church organs. The biggest organ that they got installed was in the Tremont Temple in downtown Boston. And that once that burnt down, they put the organ was bought and placed in the Mechanics Hall in Worcester. So the firm kept building organs and so forth, and he kept building onto his factory in Weston, even building cottage houses for the workers. And most of the workers were of Norwegian, Scandinavian, and local people who wanted to learn to be organ builders or working in some aspect of wood, metal, craftsmanship. And so they continued there to build in Weston up until the time in about 1935. That's when they finally went out of business. But by that time they were the premier builders at that time of organs, but they had built almost over 2,500 organs by that time of their going out of business. But
And when did they go out of business?
about between 1931 and 1935.
And was that because people just were not building organs or creating organs or installing organs anymore? Were organs falling out of favor?
Yeah, there were different, there were more organ builders now. You had the Aeolian Skinner organs and so forth. So yeah, that had different actions and so forth. But these hook organs are some of the great organs still in existence throughout the country. And the significance is that Roxbury has one of the last hook and haste organs in existence. So I think that's the great news for us. And of course, we want to have people not only see it when it's fully restored, hear it when it's fully restored, but also to learn from it. And so we've had, over the years, we've had young people learn how to play the organ on this hook and Hastings organ.
Celia, you're muted. If you.
I was gonna say there's not a Zoom anything I'm involved with without me talking while muted. I apologize. Apparently it's just something that happens for me. But I was wondering, Thomas, if you could tell us about just if there are any interesting facts about the organ, if we've had any like famous people play there or perform with it or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the most famous person that played the organ was probably E. Power Biggs, who was a British-born American organist, and he played all over the world, and certainly throughout Boston and Cambridge and Harvard, and he had many recordings. He played on the organ in the 50s, 1956. I used to have an album by E. Power Biggs on the Roxbury organ. So he's the most, I guess, the most famous person. He died in 1971 and is resting in Mount Auburn Cemetery. The interesting facts about this hook in Hastings is that it has 39 ranks, 4 divisions, 3 manuals. 3 manuals is each of the keyboards that you see in the console. It has 34 stops. I can remember when we did before the partial restoration, those stops were getting stuck. If you pulled it out, it was hard to get it back in, and then some of them wouldn't come out easily, so you'd have to really sort of put a little, really pull it really hard. So, and Scott talked about that, where they're going to refurbish those and restore them, so they should slide out very easily for any organist that plays on it. But it has 34 stops, 42 registers, and the ranks are, so that you have ranks, divisions, manuals, stops, registers, and of course about 1,500 pipes. Some of the pipes are metal, as you saw, and some of the larger pipes are wooden. And the trumpets and the trombones are in the back of the organ, and they're huge. And of course, they have that low sound that you like to hear from the organ and so forth. So
I want to just start with some of the Q&A, Thomas, and I did want to just first, share one of the chat comments, which was not a question, but it was a comment. I'm utterly impressed at Mr. Plant's experience and knowledge, as we all are, which is why we lined up to see if we could invite you to be with us this evening. So agreed. That's from Ivan, and we agree with you, Ivan.
Yeah. And then we have a question asking what was used how did you guys clean the pipes after the fire? So I know you used a bathtub, but was there any cleaning agent or that kind of
most
thing?
of it was washing them with a solution. It's mostly water, because nothing had happened from the 1930s to the time that the fire happened. They were really dirt with soot, debris and stuff like that. And of course, when we washed them, each pipe had to go into this very large tub that Ralph had got us. And so, yeah, there was a little solution. I don't know, I can't remember exactly what the detergent was, but we did wash them out and take them. And then we built before that, we had built trays to hold them once they were washed and placed in there. And each had a cross section on a piece of wood to keep them, once they were slid into the tray, they couldn't move out or fall out. So you saw some of the trays that Scott had in the shop, and that's how they looked. They were wooden trays. They weren't, they were natural wood basically. And yeah, to hold all those pipes, there are a lot of trays constructed, and a lot of pipes from all sizes to be washed. And so it was a tremendous effort. But, it went so fast, and we were all happy doing it. So I guess.
Wow. So we also have another question. Thanks for answering that one. So how many stops are on the organ, and are there any unique stops on this organ?
There are 34.
From someone who knows organs, because I don't know that I would have come up with that question. So
Right.
There are 34 stops. So usually the stops are divided into principal, string, reed, and flute. There are also divisions like this: the great, the swells, the choir, the solo, the echo, and others. And so those are things that the registers are where the pressurized air is brought into the pipes, and that creates, with a combination, they can produce different sounds. And so it's important, the ranks that you have there as well. Those are some of the different pipes in the organ that makes a particular sound and so forth. So each pipe, so if you pull those stops out, you can get a combination of stops to make them sound with a different pitch. And so if you hear some of these tunes that they might play, and you hear the big deep trombone, but then you hear the choir, you have several of those pipes together that makes a wonderful sound. And the two swells on the side of the organ is, you can put your foot down on the pedal, and it just sort of makes it swell up into the, and when you're sitting in that meeting house, you're just overcome with, this majestic sound that comes out of the organ.
Nice.
wow.
One of the follow-up questions is, can you also elaborate on the ranks, on what ranks are, and what causes the H&H organ to actually work?
So yeah, since Scott is talking about there are foot pedals, there's a big pedal, there are stops, and yet you pull out to get a sound. The ranks of pipes make the same sound, but different pitches as well. So the 34 ranks, they're sort of boom, 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 up to the biggest pipes, and the smallest pipes maybe right on top of the chest there, were very small. It's like that, little piccolos and stuff like that. So they're all set up in the organ. So you have the big choir, you pull that stop as well. So you get a chromatic sound that's round or big. And you can hold the foot pedal down. And of course you can see some of the organists as their feet are, I could never do this. Their feet are hitting all those pedals. They're pulling the stops out, and they're playing this music that's on a sheet of, it's so incredible that we have the technical expertise to do that and make it sound so great. And so when you're hearing that music, worship or celebratory events, it's incredible what the expertise that they have. So I know everyone will enjoy when the organ is fully restored to hear that wonderful organ again.
Wow. What kind of maintenance is the congregation going to have to do to keep the organ up once it's reinstalled? Does it need regular maintenance, or?
It does need regular maintenance. So the organ builder, as well as interesting enough for this organ, we were lucky during the periods even before I was there, in the 70s and certainly probably in the 50s and 60s. The Richard LaHaye's and his family were keeping the maintenance on the organ. They lived in West Roxbury. Unfortunately, Richard has passed away, and he was an organ builder. He also maintained this Hook and Hastings organs in First Church in Roxbury. And I did get to meet him and his daughter and those who were working on the organ and after the damage to the organ. So he was in and out of the church, and I got to know him quite well.
Do you know how often it needs to be, visited by a tuner? Like a piano has, I know, a certain, frequency that you should come and tune the piano. Is it similar to that, Thomas? Come every 6 months or something? And
yeah, I think anytime when it was played and someone felt that something was a little off, the organ builder and certainly both Scott and Richard had a lot of action on this organ in terms of maintenance.
Wow. And are there any photos of the washing job that
I wish
done for the
I'm
first?
still looking for them. I can't recall that someone took pictures, but she said she was going to look for me. Lydia.
Oh, if you find them, we'll put them in our e-news, Thomas.
Yeah,
I'm sure people would love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
people
so
would love to see
I was
that.
saying, well, I don't think I have any because I know it's busy, but there might be some pictures around. Yes.
There's a question in the chat that said that the pipes have to be rinsed and dried before being stored
Yes.
and returned to their position.
They had to be dried and before we put them in the boxes. Yeah.
Wow. And I think, so someone's asking a question as to where on Tremont Street the Hook and Hastings factory was, but I think you mentioned that it was probably near where the police station is.
Current police station. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so close to where we really are right now.
It really is. I mean, it's less than, I guess, about a mile from the meeting house. And of course, once they moved to Weston, it was quite a distance, but they had the railroads that could bring they usually built it, assembled it in Weston. When they built organs, they assemble it, play it, have some sort of celebratory concert, then disassemble it and ship it. And because the railroad was there, it was easy to get it where they needed to get it and get it to the location that they were. If it was in Boston, such as First Church in Roxbury, then they could get it here. And of course, they reassembled it as they are going to do when Scott is finished with the full restoration.
So
they probably used,
I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Yeah, they probably used pulleys and tackle to get it up into the gallery.
Wow. I actually, in another life, have been to Mechanics Hall quite a few times, and it's actually a really beautiful building. I mean, it's from the outside, it's interesting, but like once you go inside, it's very different than what I would think I would see. And I guess, so the organ there is the one that was originally at First Church?
No, that was the organ that was at Tremont Temple.
Oh, okay.
And when that when that Tremont Temple burned, they took the organ and the Mechanics Hall, they brought it in Worcester, and so it was reassembled there, and that's where it's been. Yes.
And the first organ from First Church, we don't know what happened to that?
We're not sure where it ended up, but I want to say, well, when they built different meeting house, they sold it off. and they got some money for it, but they don't say exactly what happened to it.
Mm. Wow.
So they just felt that they wanted a superb instrument after the first organ, and they, contracted with Hook and Hastings. Well, at that time it was Hook and Hastings, and got the organ that they thought was going to be superb music for the congregation. And I imagine they raised money through the subscription as they did before as well.
There's a comment here that I wanted to share from somebody who said in 1968 and 1969, I was the director of the Saturday Church Arts Center held in the parish hall at First Church. On rare occasions, we would share various instruments with the children in the center, including the organ. I remember playing hymns and popular songs on the organ. It was a weak and halting sound. It was clear the organ was a hidden glory. I so want to hear the organ reborn.
Oh, wonderful. That's real exciting. And they definitely need to be there in 2023 for the full voice of the organ to be held then, because they have a connection. And that's what we really like to see, that, the connection to the community and the memories people share about being in First Church and hearing the organ. I think they're going to be really surprised and real excited.
Wow. I think that, I don't know, do we have any more questions? Does anyone have any?
I see a question that I think is a great kind of final question before we do share our Dillaway Thomas House special commercial, which is, when will it be ready? When will the organ be ready? So I'd like to say we were very fortunate, the urban ministry, to have a donor who stepped forward to cover the cost of this amazing restoration, and will be this spring in April. Scott Huntington will come back and sort of put some of the organ back together in the alcove, which is undergoing some changes now to accommodate it. Then it will be boxed up very carefully, covered in plastic. And then it will be protected for the beginning of our interior restoration, for which we are now raising money. And we hope that we'll be ready to begin that restoration in the spring or summer of 2022. I expect that restoration will take about a year. And so that we could, and when that's done, Scott will come back and fully reassemble our glorious organ. And so hopefully in the summer or fall of 2023, we'll be able to welcome you back, Thomas, as a special guest, some organists, and really have a wonderful ribbon cutting and celebration and organ concert of that beautiful instrument then. So we're continuing to move forward, and we're excited to welcome the organ back at that time. And hope everyone here tonight on this webinar will be at that special event in person for a wonderful concert.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for Thomas for being with us this evening. Celia, thank you so much for joining me as a co-moderator tonight. You're going to be with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you're going to be with me. We're going to be together for the next two. The next one will be in January about our famous clocks. So that will be
that should be exciting.
Yeah. So please, everyone, stay with us, because we are so excited to premiere this public service announcement from our valued partner organization, the Dillaway Thomas House, which is right across the street and houses an amazing permanent exhibit. So once again, Thomas, thank you so much for sharing just this much of what you know about this important place with us this evening. It was wonderful to have you.
It's great being here and being a part of the organ restoration. So I'm glad to have been here this evening to share with you some of the history that I've been a part of at First Church in Roxbury. So thank you.
It's an honor. It's an honor, Thomas. And thank you, Celia.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night. Hopefully I'll read it.
Hi, and welcome to the Roxbury Heritage State Park. My name is Antonio Menifee, and I'm the director.
And my name is Ina Fox, and I am the Visitor Services Supervisor here.
The park was established in 1984 by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. We're currently standing in front of the historical Dillaway Thomas House. Built in 1750, it started as a parsonage for the minister of the First Church across the street.
The park is a space for visitors to learn about Roxbury's rich history and cultures. Inside the house, we have a permanent exhibit that tells the story of Roxbury's evolution from its founding as a Puritan town in 1630 to the present-day community of Roxbury, which is a rich and diverse community. So let's go inside and check out the exhibit.
Come on, follow us inside.
I'm standing in front of the kitchen hearth as it would have been when Reverend Amos Adams, pastor for the First Church, lived here. As you walk through the exhibit, you'll see that each room is devoted to a different time period in Roxbury's history and the people who are part of that history.
During the siege of Boston in 1775, the Dillaway Thomas House served as the headquarters for General John Thomas and his troops. In the 1800s, Charles K. Dillaway, who was the headmaster of the Boston Latin School, he lived here. Now, what role did Roxbury play for the American Revolution? And who were the history makers in the 1950s when Roxbury became the heart of the Black community?
You'll find the answer to those questions and many others when you explore the exhibit. To learn more about our guided tours, other programs, as well as our special exhibitions in the community gallery, please go to Roxbury Heritage State Park on the DCR website. We really look forward to your visit.